Hello everybody, this is Ben, also known as Merlini. This will be my first tutorial and I will be covering such topics as launch options, console and game settings, spell and item hotkeys, camera acceleration and control, shift queuing, and the in-game timer. So the first thing I wanted to go over is the launch options. This can be accessed from right-clicking on your Steam and then going to Library, right-clicking on Dota 2, and then Properties, and then Launch Options. I have maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things. Novid removes that first splash screen at the start with the valve with a little thing in his head. I personally don't like viewing that, so I just type -novid. -console enables a console which allows you to do a variety of commands. I would highly enable this. The default key for accessing the console is the tilde key, which is the key next to your 1. -international lets me have this blue load screen that people always ask me about on my stream. So that is one of the most commonly asked questions, and I put in the FAQ, but people still ask probably every day. So -international will change your load screen to blue and your background to blue, and it's like the blue fire as opposed to the red one. -window no border I think is mostly just for streaming purposes, and it just changes from full screen to like a pseudo full screen. I'm not too sure about that. And then -w is the width and -h is the height with the pixels after. I use 1920 by 1200, which is a 16 by 10 resolution instead of a normal 16:9. So those are most of the things in your launch options. There's a couple other things you can do, but these are the only ones that I use. So for the console, you access this by going to your tilde. I actually rebound it to my left bracket key because I just kept hitting it in the middle of the game, and having this and not being able to see the team fight is pretty ridiculous, so I rebound it to the left bracket key. There's a lot of things you can do with a console. Firstly, you can check your ping. So you can just do -netgraph1 and it'll show you your FPS and ping. You can also do it in game just by typing -ping and it'll show it up here. But if you want your FPS and other information, just type net_graph1. And then to turn it off, you can do net_graph0. You can also move it to over here or anywhere else and make it smaller, just so it's not, you know, taking up like a 16th of your screen in the bottom right corner and obstructing your view. Some other useful commands is Dota force right click attack 1. This, oops, I actually spelled Dota wrong. Dota force right click attack 1. This actually enables right click deny, which is not enabled by default. So if I wanted to deny a creep, I can just right click instead of having A click. A click is just from Dota 1 mechanic. You couldn't actually attack your own creeps without actually putting in this command. So now I can just right click and it'll automatically deny without me having to press A. So it's useful for the newer players, but if you play Warcraft 3, Dota 1, you're probably already used to it. So it's mostly just for new players, or if you just want to simply minimize keystrokes. Another one that is also very useful is Dota_minimap_hero_size, and then you can actually increase the hero minimap size. I can just do 1200 for illustration, and you notice that this big blue dot, which is me, is really big, and this helps with noticing ganks and noticing when your teammates are ganking and just who's around the map. Although if you make it really big, it's really hard to see what's going on in team fights and who's chasing who and whatnot. So 600 is pretty reasonable. You can change it to 1200 or whatever size you like. One of the last commands I want to talk about is Dota_range_display 1200. 1200 is the range for Blink Dagger, and if you're stanking or Magnetar or any sort of initiation that requires a blink, then you really want to have this at least memorized. I've been playing Dota long enough, so I generally know the range for Blink Dagger, but if I just click it right here, and then I can know how far I blink. However, it is a little bit annoying having this green line always around, but it is pretty useful. 1200 is also the experience range, although it's a little bit smaller for deny, so you can just tailor this to your fancy. Maybe you're a tinker, you want to see how far away you can hit people with rockets or something like that, but just tailor this to your fancy. It's very useful for learning. If you want to turn it off, just change it to 0. There are also a couple things you can do with the console. You can change the minimap hero icons to hero names or hero portraits. Just Google those. Google is your best friend. Lastly, I wanted to talk about one more thing. You can actually set specific hotkeys for specific camera positions, which is mostly useful for the runes. So one that I did earlier was bind F4 in quotes Dota camera set position POS and then these specific coordinates, and then I bound the top rune to F4 and the second one, the bottom rune, to F5. And with this, I can just press F4 and then my camera immediately moves to the top rune, which is really useful. And I can press F5 and it'll immediately go to the bottom rune. I don't have to click on anything. I can just press a button and I can just switch back and forth in between these. However, you need to put these into the console every time that you want to hotkey these specific keys. So what most people do is create something called an auto exec, which is located in this specific folder in your computer. I have my stuff installed to an E drive, and this program file is x86. That's where Steam is installed. So your program file, Steam, Steam apps, common, Dota 2 beta, Dota, and then CFG for config. And then you want to create a text file called autoexec.txt and then change the .txt to CFG, and then you can also edit this file to have whatever you like. Maybe you want to enable right click deny every time you start up Dota. Maybe you want to have these F4 and F5 positions every time, but you can replace F4 and F5 with whatever you wish. So another thing that I want to talk about is hotkeys. In Dota 1, it was very difficult to use QWER. Notice I have QWER as my hotkeys as opposed to normal Sprout would be T, teleportation is R, I believe. Force of Nature is F, and then Nature's Wrath I think is W. I still remember most of the legacy keys just because I played Dota 1 for so long, but for newer players and for older players alike, I would highly recommend switching to QWER. It just simply makes things a lot easier. It's right next to the home row, and it's very easy to combo stuff. If you want to combo self-sprout and then TP, you can just press Q and then W. The keys are right next to each other. It's very easy to use, and if you're Tiny or Juggernaut or anything like that, it just makes things a lot easier. In Dota 1, Omni Slash on Juggernaut used to be bound to N, and then if you wanted Blade Fury immediately after so you didn't get stunned, it would be F. So I would misclick that all the time, and I would just die because the hotkeys were terrible. So now with Dota 2 being enabled, you can just have QWER, and it just makes things a lot simpler. Avalanche Toss is just QW right next to each other, and it's very easy as opposed to Dota 1 legacy keys, which is V and T. Also, if you're a new player, you have to learn all the hotkeys, and that's just a pain in the ass by itself. So I would highly recommend switching to QWER. My fingers are usually on the home row anyways. A for attack, S for S canceling. Maybe I want to cancel here or go here and then cancel my TP because I see a couple enemies. I just press S. My fingers are already there anyways, and I bind my hero to 1. So everything's just right there on the top left of my keyboard, and it's very easy to access. The less you have to worry about hotkeys and the mechanics of actually pressing the keys and which hotkey is which, the more you can actually concentrate on playing the game and doing cool stuff. I also re-hotkeyed a couple of other things. Let me take off this console, and then I already said I changed my console to the left bracket key, as you can see here. Pause is default by F9. Some people don't know how to pause, so it's already there. And then I changed my scoreboard to 7 and my activate glyph to 6. I think glyph is maybe F or J or somewhere around there. It's somewhere on the home row, and I used to accidentally press it all the time, and I would be like, who glyphed? And then after a few times I realized that it was actually me, and sometimes I would just type without pressing enter, and our glyph would be just used, and I'd be like, what, who did that? And it was actually me, and then it's on cooldown for 5 minutes, and sometimes it'll cost you a tower, so you don't want any misclicks like that. So I actually rebound it to 6, which is pretty far away from home row, and I want to make sure that is not something that I press by accident. And the scoreboard, you can just hold down the button. Scoreboard is actually pretty useful, not just to check who's has the highest kills and who's died a lot and how many assists you have, since people seem to care a lot about their KDA, but you can also check what level people are. That's the most useful part. When people aren't on the map, especially roamers and gankers and junglers, I want to see what they're doing. And if they're leveling up, if I see it 1 and 2, or I check 30 seconds later and they're 1 level higher, I know that they're most likely creep pulling or just getting experience from the fog. Maybe they're just sitting up here and just getting experience from inside experience range but outside of vision. But what's most important is that they aren't just running around ganking. If they're leveling up, that means they're probably not ganking you, which is actually really important. So I use a scoreboard mostly for that. Sometimes I do check kills and deaths just to see who's getting a lot of farm and whatnot. But it is useful to have the scoreboard hotkey. I don't really have that many other things taken that aren't default hotkey. So my item hotkeys are actually mouse 5, mouse 4. These are the forward and the back buttons on the mouse. I think this one is the back button. And this one is this one's actually the forward button. This one's the back button. And then I use ZXCV for the other 4. ZXCV is also right next to the home row. And if I really need fast reactions, I see a storm bolt coming towards me and I really want to dodge it, I can just press V and dodge it in time, and which is much easier than pressing Alt V or Alt Q or Shift Q or whatever you want, whatever else people have hotkey. I think just having one key that's very close to home row makes it very easy to dodge, and again, the less you have to worry about which hotkey is what item, the more you can concentrate on actually dodging stuff and using your items appropriately. This is also another reason why QWER, in my opinion, is better than Legacy, because sometimes you have some random hotkeys for ZXCV and you just can't have item hotkeys there because some heroes have, I remember Scattershot I believe was C, so I couldn't have a C hotkey in the off chance that I played Sniper. And sometimes I used to have Q as a hotkey, but when I played Invoker, Quaz is Q. And it would be really annoying to have to change hotkeys sometimes that were really convenient, just simply because heroes had some specific hotkeys. So just setting QWER over Legacy enables you to have really good item hotkeys, and whether you want to have these rune hotkeys to maybe ZXCV or something like that, then it would just be a lot easier, and it makes the mechanics a lot simpler. And also having Alt and Shift and Control as hotkeys, I don't recommend that. I used to do it before, and it just really cuts down on your reaction time because you have to press 2 keys instead of 1. It might not seem like that big of a deal, but 0.1 seconds as opposed to 0.2 seconds might actually save you from a death. Especially if you have Blink or Yules, something that you really want to dodge, you really do need as fast reaction time as possible. I actually rebound the tilde key to the voice chat because I would accidentally hit the console command in game, as I said before, and I think that I don't really mind if I accidentally hit the voice hotkey, because if someone hears my like mouse clicks or something, I don't really care that much, and it's really close to my one key. If I want to say, hey guys, mid is missing, my fingers are almost already right there, and it's really easy for me to continue microing and talk at the same time. Hey guys, mid is missing, and my fingers don't have to move somewhere ridiculous. I think the default is comma or T. T's not so bad. I used to use comma because I think I tried to use T as different hotkeys, but just make sure that is something that's very useful. You can also use Y is a chat wheel. You can just say missing. I think it's a little bit like I often do missing instead of well played, or if you just want to troll your teammates by having Furion grunt, middle is missing, then you can just press Y and do these. Sometimes I had trouble unbinding specific keys. You can just do unbind for like the glyph key, I think it was H or J or something like that. You can just do unbind J and it'll actually unbind it. When I did it via the options, it sometimes didn't unbind. So if you have that problem, then just use the unbind command in the console. So the other commands are attack, move, stop, and hold position. These are the basic commands, and they used to have it right here in Warcraft 3, but they don't actually have that anymore. Whenever I move, I almost always attack move everywhere, just because if I run an enemy and I'm a Furion with a lot of items, I don't really have that much damage. I want to be able to right-click people as soon as possible if someone approaches from the fog. So almost always I'll right-click, unless I'm trying to run home. If I'm running away, I don't want to stop and attack someone accidentally. Or if I'm doing neutrals, I just A-click. So I almost always use this attack command, and I also use it for denying, but I do not have the right-click deny as some people do. I guess it does cut down on tree keystroke. I may actually switch to that later, but I'm just way too used to it right now, which is an argument some people use for using Legacy over QWER. So for stops is useful for canceling attack animation. Let's say I'm attacking this tower and I really want to time the last hit. I can just constantly hit S and it'll actually cancel the attack animation. It's also useful for out microing your enemies in middle, but a lot of people don't actually know how to do this. So just press your S key and it'll stop. It'll also stop some spells. Let's say I want to TP up here and then I see a couple of people approach and I want to cancel, I just press S. So S is useful for a multitude of things, mostly for canceling specific commands. Next is hold position. Hold position, you don't actually stop issuing your command, you just don't move and you attack the closest enemy. This is useful for very few things. When I want to stand right here and I don't want to, maybe these neutrals are being pulled or something like that, I don't want to accidentally move away from this position. If I really want to stand in this position, maybe I'm looking to gank someone or waiting for someone to come up the hill, I can just go here and then shift H and then I won't move. If there's any enemies around, I still won't follow them, just because I want to be uphill. Or if I get ruptured by Bloodseeker, or if I get mana leak by Kato and I want to lose a gajillion mana, then I'll just press H and I'll still attack, which is more useful than just sitting there doing nothing. But at the same time, I'm not losing a lot of mana. So I'll press H sometimes just for things like that. For the move command is actually not that useful, but it is useful in some specific scenarios. If I am Riki and I get illusion runes and I want to scout and I don't actually want to attack people, I just want to follow somebody, then I'll just right click on someone. If it's an ally, you can just right click on them and it'll move. But if it's an enemy, you'll automatically attack them if you issue command on them, if you have auto attack on. So you can just M click, which is move, and then I'll just follow him. And granted, they're not moving right now, but if you're Riki or someone invis and you want like a movable ward, then you just M and follow on units, and that will actually prevent any attack command from being issued. One of the most useful things that the M command is used for is tanking Roshan with illusions. If you auto attack, if you attack Roshan with an illusion, it will instantly die. Notice it tried to issue the attack command and it died. So what you're supposed to do is just press M. Notice I have this little walkie dude on my cursor, and then I just click on Roshan and he'll just try and follow Roshan and he won't issue an attack command. And then this way I can use my illusions, whether it be from Manta or PL illusions or illusion runes. I can use it to tank Roshan, which is actually really useful. A lot of people ask about auto attack on versus off. I have it on simply because of Dota 1. And it's just the way I learned to play because there was no other option at the time. There's not really that many pros or cons to doing it either way, just whatever suits your fancy. Most pros are old school Dota 1 players, and I believe most of them do use auto attack. I think it is useful for some stuff, like let's say I'm moving here and then I like want to buy stuff from Chicken. I'm like browsing through the shop, or I'm looking at this Chicken in the secret shop, making sure my relic or something doesn't get killed, and someone sneaks up on me. I'll attack them a couple times before I can react. And those couple auto attacks may or may not matter. And one con that I do see sometimes is, like, let's say you're a Quap, you're over here, and someone's chasing you, and you blink into here, and they're trying to find you, and I guess I should blink somewhere else. They're trying to find you, and you don't want to attack them. If you attack them, you'll reveal yourself in your position. So if you have auto attack on, you have to keep spamming S, making sure that you don't attack. Whereas if you have auto attack off, then you don't have to worry about that. There are pros to cons to each. I have it on. I don't really think there's that many benefits, pros or cons to either one. Another thing in the options is double tap self cast. That is something that I will always have off. And one of the main reasons is because, I mean, I'm Furion. I can sprout myself just by pressing Q twice. But let's say I get orchided by someone and I want to sprout someone immediately. There's a Nyx on me, he's raged, he's going crazy, and I want to sprout him so I can get away from his melee attacks, and he doesn't have a quelling blade. I don't want to do that as soon as possible when he has an orchid, and I'm spamming my Q button, waiting for that silence to be over, and I accidentally hit it twice right out of the silence, and I sprout myself and then I die. And that has happened to me a couple of times, and it just, the amount of mistakes that I made from it is just ridiculous, and I just don't think it's a good idea to have. Another thing is Shadow Demon. Like, let's say you get stunned and you really want to cast it as soon as possible or silenced, and you want to disrupt this guy that's on you as soon as possible, except instead of disrupting him, you disrupt yourself because you double tap Q and then they just crush you after waiting for 2.5 seconds and then you die. And that has happened a couple times, and I've seen it happen to other people, and I think the amount of mistakes that double tap ability self-cast causes is not worth it. It's already automatically enabled for some items like Yules. If I want to Yules dodge something, I can just double click Yules and it'll automatically work, even though this double tap ability self-cast is off. It works for Force Staff and a couple other things. So for the important stuff, I think it's already on for by default, whether or not you have it on or off. But for spells like Sprout and Disrupt, just click on yourself or click on your portrait. You can click on your portrait too if you want to minimize misclicking, which I do sometimes. But I think maybe the few times that you'll save yourself from double tap ability self cast is not worth the amount of mistakes that are potentially caused from it. One thing that not too many new players know about is that there's a huge difference in between night and day vision. I can only see over here, which is maybe 800 range, I believe, is the default vision for nighttime, and I can barely see a little bit longer than I can attack. And normally in the daytime you can see up this cliff, and that is actually a really, really big deal, especially if you play solo middle. And not having vision up this cliff is a big deal, and it's very noticeable in between day and night, although some players don't know that. You have 1800 range for vision during daytime, which is, for reference, 600 is range of most range heroes' attacks. You can just hover over this. It says attack range 600, and that's just 3 times that. So Furon can probably attack this range creep. So just 3 times that is about the vision for daytime, and then just a little bit past that, 1 1/3 times my attack range is the vision for nighttime. So as you can tell, there's a huge difference. I can't see across this cliff, but with the ease of a ward, with the help of a ward, and this is about similar to daytime vision. It's actually a little bit smaller, but for all intents and purposes, it's close enough. And you can actually see across a cliff. So in daytime, I can see across this cliff, and in nighttime, I can't. And there's huge differences, and there's huge ramifications for that in ganking and playing it safe and playing aggressively. So just make sure you're aware of that. Some heroes already have night vision. These include Drow Ranger, Luna with Aura, Meepo, and there's a couple, I think, enchanters as well. So just make sure that if you're really, really into that kind of stuff and advanced mechanics, you just read up on that so you can actually know who can see you at night and who can't. I guess Night Stalker is one obvious hero too. He can actually see really, really far at night. I believe 1800 range. So he can see across this hill. So sometimes you'll just be standing here and he will just be staring at you and you can't even see him back, which is ridiculous. There's very few cases in the game where you can see people without them seeing you back without observer wards, besides being uphill or having observer wards or like Zeus Ultimate and a few other spells like that. Another thing I want to talk about is the camera control. So in the camera control, I have acceleration all the way up. Acceleration all the way up actually means no acceleration, which is how it was in Dota 1. So if you're a Dota 1 player and you really miss the no acceleration, notice when I move there's no acceleration when I'm starting or stopping. It just makes your movements a lot more crisp and how you look around the map a lot more crisp. And I think that having no acceleration is the best for precision. And the camera speed, I think, defaults around here. I actually have it on double because I scroll around the map a lot. I want to see what's going on in other lanes. I want to see how much HP this tower is at. I want to see where their initiators are. I want to see the positioning of my teammates, the positioning of their teammates. So I scroll around a lot. And if you ever watch me play, I scroll around very, very often, especially in team fights. And being able to scroll around faster helps me out a lot. And I think it'll help most people out too. So you can just tone it up a little bit to whatever you're comfortable with. I would recommend a little bit more than default though. Most of these other ones, they aren't that important. I mean, they're mostly just self-explanatory. So for hotkeying heroes and chicken, this is a habit I carried over from Dota 1. I hotkey my hero to 1 instead of F1. F1 is a little bit too far away from home row. Whenever I want to, let's say I'm checking a rune, I press my F4 button, I check the rune, and I want to go to my hero really fast because I don't want to miss that last hit and get that extra 40 gold, I'll just double tap 1 so I can move back really fast instead of having to scroll all the way over and just lose out on a couple of seconds. So those couple of seconds might save you a lot, and I double tap 1 so many times throughout the game, and it's just so I can move around the line and gather as much information as possible. I didn't actually buy a chicken this game, let me buy one real fast. When I buy a chicken, I always hotkey it to 3. I think there's actually a control in the options you can set it to, but just from Dota 1, you can select courier using 3. You can just set it to 3 or whatever you like. But I just use this control group function. I just select the courier, select control 3, and then every time I want to look at the courier, maybe I want to see what's on it, maybe I want to see where it is without looking on the mini map. Maybe I want to see who's around it, I just double tap 3, and then if I want to check back to my hero, double tap 1. And this is how I manage moving around the map a lot. And if I want to look at top lane, I usually just click on the mini map click and then scroll, and then click here and scroll. That's usually how I move about. And then to get back to my hero, just double tap 1, go back to base, double tap 3, and maybe I want to look at secret shop or whatever. I can double tap 3 if chicken's there too. Make sure you know the hotkeys for the courier. I actually don't use them as much as I should, but most of the ones I use are R. A lot of people forget to use a speed boost on chicken, and it just makes them super fast and deliver your items that much faster, and allows your teammates to use it a little bit earlier. So make sure you use that speed boost. It's a pretty short cooldown. I have WTF mode enabled, so there's actually no cooldown on it right now. And I also hotkey the chicken because I want to see what items my friends are bringing to them. Maybe this Enigma actually went bottle instead of Soul Ring, or maybe this guy bottom is going a Midas instead. And I don't even have to click on his hero. I can just click on the chicken because I don't have my teammates' heroes always hotkeyed. So if I know that there's a Midas, I know that this guy's mostly going to be passive farming the jungle and using Midas on creeps and whatnot. And then if my Enigma has bottle, he's probably going to be checking runes. So you can actually see a little bit of your teammates' play just from the items that they have. And I think hotkeying chicken is very, very important. It just makes things a lot smoother. And then if I'm microing here, right clicking, or maybe there's no creeps, I can just buy a bottle and it's a little bit away from base, and then grab it and then send it to me using F and R and making sure that it's speed boosted. And I already know that it's coming to me because I just memorized the hotkeys, and it will just make your gameplay a little bit more efficient. I'm really big on efficiency in games, and I know there are some things that I don't do efficiently, like not having right click deny, but overall I try and make my play as efficient as possible. Another thing about efficiency is shift queuing. So when I'm checking a rune, sometimes people will grab the rune and then I'll see them grab the rune and then they'll pause for a second and then they'll go somewhere else. And I know that they didn't shift queue it. Notice if I want to go top immediately after picking up this illusion rune, let's say I have a bottle. Let me grab a bottle real fast. I don't need these drums, or I don't need this blink. I'll have a bottle real fast, and then I want to bottle it and move top as soon as possible because I'm dire and I want to defend my top tower. I right click it and then I'll shift Q and move up. And then I'll just grab it and immediately, with a really fluid movement, just go up here. Or let's say I'm a support and I'm really scared. I'm a 500 HP CM and I'm really scared of dying to anybody. So I want to place this ward over here and run back to base as soon as possible. So I'll press my hotkey C, click over here, and then I'll shift click back here. And I'll immediately place a ward, and then after that I just immediately run back, and that minimizes my exposure and danger of being across the river, especially as a squishy support. So use shift Q for a lot of things. One other thing it's useful for is when you TP to a tower and you want to move or blink immediately after. Let's say I want to TP here and then I want to Manta. I can click here and then I'll press Shift V, and then immediately after I TP I'll Manta style. And it just makes things a lot more fluid. One thing that it's very, very common for is shift queuing, epicenter, and blink. That's probably one of the most common things shift queuing is used for. So you can epicenter, and then without even missing one pulse, you can blink immediately after the cast time is done, and then queue up your stun afterwards. So make sure you use shift queuing. Sometimes I use shift queuing for chicken too. Let's say I'm in bottom lane, or I send a chicken to secret shop and I want to bring an item to me on bottom lane, and I don't want it to run this way because maybe there's a guy from mid checking rune bottom and I don't want him to snipe the chicken and give their team a free 1,000 gold. So what I'll do is, instead of just pressing F and bringing it to me and being lazy, I'll just send it down here, and then I can shift click down here. You can use a map or the mini map, whichever you choose, but maybe there's a bounty hunter that really likes killing chickens, or there's a fear on the opposite team, or maybe there's just an invis hero back here and you don't want to lose your item. You really want your ring of health or whatever you get from the side shop, and you can just use shift queuing, and you can even like press here and then shift F, or here and then shift click here and then shift F, and then it'll still bring it to you after wherever you waypoint it. So shift queuing just adds on commands after the first one. So if I want to like move in a circle, I can just shift queue this circle, and you'll notice little flags around your heroes too. Another thing I wanted to talk about is the game clock. So it's 28 minutes and 51 seconds, and there's a couple of things the game clock is used for. Firstly is to check runes. Runes spawn every even minute. Most players know this, but it is something that I did want to touch upon. Secondly, first night is around 5:50 game time. I'm not really sure why it changed from Dota 1, but that's just how it is. 5:50 is around the first night in game, and day and night lasts around 6 minutes each. The only thing that affects day or night and how it changes is Eclipse, Luna's ultimate, and Night Stalker's ultimate. Night Stalker's ultimate depends on what level it is. It'll change it for however many seconds his ultimate is, and I think Eclipse makes it nighttime for 10 seconds. And if you cast Night Stalker's ultimate while it's already night, you'll extend the night. So if it's 40 seconds and you cast it, night will last 6 minutes and 40 seconds instead of 6. So don't worry about casting nighttime during night, you'll only extend it. And most Night Stalkers do that when their ultimate is sufficient level, they'll spam their nighttime while it's already night. Another thing that game time is useful for is respawning trees. If I cut down these trees for whatever reason, or if I'm a Beastmaster top and I want to cut down these trees to minimize ganks, if I cut them down at 30:02, I know that they respawn at 35:02, and it's 5 minutes from whenever you cut them down. It's mildly useful for some situations. It's mostly useful for jungling, and if I want to cut down these trees because I'm jungling and I want to be efficient and kill these two camps without having to go all the way around, I'll often cut down these trees, and I'll know that they'll respawn around 35:15. Another thing game time is useful for is Roshan. Whenever I take Roshan, or take out Roshan, I always try and make sure that I take down game time. And let's say I kill him at 30:30, then I know the Aegis expires at 36:30, and I know that the next Roshan will be at 40:30. That's a very, very important thing, and I talk about that on my stream a lot too. Another thing is that neutrals spawn at 00:30 game time, 1 minute game time, and every minute thereafter. Some people are unsure about that, so I just like to touch upon that. And creeps spawn every 30 seconds, starting at 00. So they'll spawn like here, here, and here every 30 seconds from the big horn that sounds at the beginning of the game.
Through shady lanes.
Another thing about the game time is for creep pulling things. Most people creep pull this around 16 or 46, and most people double spawn things around 53 with the most recent patch. And then the creeps meet in middle around 18 seconds, and they meet in the corners around 00 and 0:30. This is most useful for if you're ganking around behind the creep waves. Like let's say I'm right here, and I really want to gank someone at this top tower, but I don't want to be spotted by creeps as I go over here. So it's 8 seconds, 9 seconds game time. My creeps just reached my T2, so their creeps are like right here, and I can go right now, but the creeps will be right here. And then at 00, they'll be in the corners. So you can either memorize whenever they reach the corners, or you can just use your own creeps as a guideline. So I'll stand right here and they'll reach me right at 0. So you can memorize that if you want and be a nerd like me, or you can just try and do it by looking at your own creeps. My creeps just reach my T2, so their creeps are right here, right about to come. So you can just use that as a basic guideline. It's mostly useful for when I play Tinker and I want to see when I can march the next wave. And the last thing I want to talk about is micromanaging. I'm not a very good Chen or a Meepo or a Visage player, but I think I know something about the hotkeys. For Meepo, if you only have 4 Meepos, I think you use 1, 2, 3, 4 for each individual Meepo, and then 5 for all of them. I think I talked to some Meepo players before, and that's what they did. You can ask some pro Meepos if you really want some lessons on that. For Chen, I think I use 1 for the hero, and then 2, 3, and 4 for the individual creeps, and then you can use 5 for everything. Some people also do 1 for their own hero, and then 2 for all the creeps. It just depends on personal preference and how much you really want to micro. Most gens have enough trouble microing one creep as is, and usually they just put all their creeps in the same group. But if you're really, really pro at microing, or if you played SE2 a lot and you're really comfortable with microing a lot, then you can use multiple hotkeys for different units. And Visage, probably you can just do 1 for yourself and then 2 for your gargoyles. There's also a command in the options that you can select all other units. I don't actually have this bound right now, but if I wanted to always have my treants in 2, right now I have to manually select them and then press Control 2. Then I can just select that to 2 and just change it. But it'll also group your illusions, it'll also group your necro books or your manta illusions and other stuff too, maybe your HOD creep. So just I think it's just I just use Control 2 just because it's easier for me. It would probably be more efficient if I had a specific hotkey for that, but I don't always want all my illusions in group 2. Sometimes I want to have one with me in group 1, so I do use Control group instead of having those set to hotkeys. But I think for most intents and purposes it would be easier to just do that. So I think that concludes my remake of my first guide, and it's also bumped up in resolution. I think I had it on 800p before, 720-800, and now it should be on 1080/1200 depending on which resolution you look at. So thank you everybody for watching. I will do a remake of my second tutorial, which is on warding, by the end of January. Thanks everybody for paying attention. And don't forget to follow me on Twitch. I stream almost daily, twitch.tv/MerliniDota. And then my Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, all the same, is /MerliniDota. Thanks everybody.